Nolan sat at his small workbench deep inside the repair bay of the space station called Orion Drift. His fingers were covered in grease, and a broken panel from a trade ship lay in front of him. The light above him flickered, but he didn't notice. He was too busy thinking again about her. Her name was Ayara. She wasn't human. She was Alarital, elegant, and graceful, in a way that made everyone turn their heads. Her silver-blue skin had a soft glow under the station lights, and her long, dark hair was always tied neatly behind her neck. She moved like flowing water, smooth and calm. But to Nolan, she was more than beautiful. She was kind, smart, and stronger than anyone he knew. They had worked together for 3 years, fixing damaged ships, helping traders who passed through the Outer Rim. He was just a human engineer, born on a dusty colony world. She came from a proud, quiet people who rarely showed emotion. But from the first day they worked together, she had smiled at him. That smile had lived in his mind ever since, but he never told her how he felt. Every day, Nolan talked to her, laughed with her, shared food during long shifts. They sat together during station emergencies, helped each other during spacewalks, and even got stuck once inside a broken cargo hold for 2 hours. And still, he said nothing. He was scared. He thought, why would someone like her love a human like him? She could have anyone.
Oh.
She had suitors from powerful alien families, and he was just... Nolan, that day, he was fixing the ship's coolant lines when Ayara walked into the bay. Her soft boots made no sound, but Nolan always knew when she was near. Her scent was like warm air after rain, something he couldn't explain. He looked up and smiled. "You're early," he said. "You're late," she replied with a teasing tone. Her voice was always calm, like the hum of distant stars. She walked over and placed a small container beside him. "I brought food. You skipped your meal again?" He blinked. "You noticed?" "I always notice," she said, and then sat beside him without another word. Nolan's heart beat faster. This wasn't new. She often brought him food, small things. Sometimes spicy dried fruit from her world, other times tea that helped him sleep. She never asked for anything in return. They ate in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It never was. Still, he wanted to say something, anything. Just a hint of how he felt. Instead, he talked about ship parts. Coolant lines melted, he muttered, pointing with his tool. "Again, these traders don't take care of their engines." Ayar leaned close, her shoulder touching his. "They never learn." Nolan froze for a second. He could feel the warmth from her arm. If he turned his head just a little, he'd see her face up close. But he didn't move. "You know," he said suddenly, "I've been thinking about leaving. The station someday." "Really?" Her voice became still. "Where would you go?" "I don't know," he said. "Maybe somewhere quiet. A small moon, a personal workshop, no noise, just stars." Ayara looked at him with unreadable eyes. "Would you leave without telling me?" He laughed nervously. "No, of course not." She nodded, and for a moment, the room felt different. Like something had changed, like something unspoken had passed between them. Then the cum unit on the wall buzzed, breaking the moment. A new task came in, another trader needing repairs. "Aha." "Stood up. Let's go." Nolan followed her, but part of him wished he'd said more. Why was it so hard? He could rebuild engines, reroute power systems, even survive a vacuum leak. But he couldn't tell a woman, an alien woman, that he loved her. Later that night, he lay in his small bunk. The station's artificial lights dimmed outside the window, and the stars blinked in the distance. He stared at the ceiling and whispered to himself, "I love you, Ayara. Ayara." It was quiet. He repeated the words again, softer. "I love you." Duh. She wasn't there to hear it. He rolled over and closed his eyes. Maybe one day. Maybe soon. But for now, the words remained in the dark, like all the stars just out of reach. The next morning, the space station was busier than usual. Traders from 3 different systems had arrived, and the docking bays were packed. Alarms buzzed, doors hissed open and closed, and the smell of heated metal filled the air. Nolan was already at his workstation, tightening bolts on a landing stabilizer. His hands moved fast. But his mind was elsewhere, still stuck on what he didn't say the day before. Awaya hadn't acted any different. In fact, when she arrived, she smiled at him and handed him a warm drink, just like always. But now Nolan noticed everything more clearly. The way her fingers brushed his when she passed the cup, the way she stood close when talking, the way her eyes lingered on him a little too long. Was she trying to tell him something? He didn't know. "You're quiet today," she said, watching him work. "Just tired," he lied. She nodded but didn't press further. Instead, she sat on the bench beside him and picked up a scanner. "I'll help." They worked together for hours, saying little. But the silence between them was filled with unspoken thoughts. Every time their hands touched, even by accident, Nolan's heart raced. He wanted to speak, to break the silence, but he didn't. That afternoon, a group of humans passed by their station. They were loud and laughing, wearing uniforms from a cargo ship Nolan once worked on. One of them saw him and waved. "Nolan, you still fixing junk for aliens?" Nolan forced a smile and waved back. "Yep, best junk in the galaxy." They laughed and moved on. But Ayara looked at him strangely. "Do humans often joke like that?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said. "They don't mean anything bad." Ayara nodded slowly. "You do not mind being called that?" "Not really. I know who I am." She looked at him, her gaze softening. "I know who you are, too." Before Nolan could ask what she meant, her communicator beeped. She stood up quickly. Another ship in Bay 6 were needed. They grabbed their tools and walked side by side through the long hallway. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Nolan took a deep breath. "Ayara, do you ever think about leaving this place?" She glanced at him. "Yes. Sometimes." "Why?" "Just wondering. What would you do?" "Go home," she said. "Maybe build a garden, or teach." "My mother always wanted me to teach." Nolan smiled. "You'd be a good teacher. You'd think so?" "No, so." Her eyes sparkled for a moment, but then she looked away. "And you?" "I'd like a small house, a quiet one, maybe by a lake." 8. No alarms, no broken ships. Ayara smiled softly. "That sounds peaceful." They arrived at Base 6, where a small transport ship had landed crooked on the pad. The pilot, a short furry creature with 6 eyes, waved nervously. "It's the left engine." It sparked during descent. Yara knelt beside the ship, inspecting the damage. "It's burned through the coil. We'll need to replace it." Nolan nodded. "Go get the part." As he walked to the storage room, he whispered to himself again. "Just tell her. It's not that hard." He found the coil and carried it back. But as he returned, he saw something that made him stop. A tall Ilari male had entered the bay. He wore a silver robe and had markings along his forehead, symbols of family status. He walked straight to Ayara and greeted her with a deep nod. She stood up and returned the gesture. "Tolan," she said. "I didn't know you were coming." "Passing through," the male said. "I heard you were stationed here." Nolan watched as they spoke. They stood close, speaking in soft voices. Once the male reached out and touched her arm. Ayara didn't move away. Nolan felt something heavy in his chest. He walked over slowly, trying to stay calm. "Here's the part," he said, placing it beside the ship. Ayara turned. "Thank you." The male looked at him. "And who is this?" "It's Nolan," she said quickly. "A teammate." Teammate. That word stung more than it should have. Nolan nodded politely and stepped back. "I'll finish the install." He worked in silence while Ayara and the other male continued talking. Laughter. Light touches, soft looks. Nolan didn't understand their language, but he didn't need to. He finished the job and left the bay without another word. Later in the storage room, he sat alone. His hands were still dirty, but he didn't care. His heart felt like it had been crushed. He thought, of course she wouldn't choose me. Why would she? There were others better ones like her. Same species, same customs. He didn't blame her. He blamed himself for hoping Awaya walked in a few minutes later. "You left so quickly," she said. "Job was done," he replied. avoiding her eyes. She looked confused. Did I do something wrong? He shook his head. No, nothing. She didn't leave. She stepped closer. You're acting strange. Nolan stood up and forced a smile. It's fine, Ayara. Really. I'm just tired. Him for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. If you say so. She turned and walked out, her steps slow and unsure. Nolan sat down again, his head in his hands. But a silence around him felt heavier than before. He whispered, I missed my chance. The next few days passed slowly. Nolan did his work quietly, avoiding long conversations. He fixed broken engines, checked airlocks, placed faulty lights, but none of it made him feel better, Ayara had noticed. She came to work on time, brought tea like always, but the warmth between them was different now. She would glance at him, as if waiting for something. But Nolan never met her eyes for long. He acted like everything was normal, though inside he felt like something important had cracked. The tall Ilari male Talon was still on the station. He came often, always found a reason to speak with Ayara. Sometimes they'd walk together in the corridors, talking in soft tones. Nolan never followed, but he saw them once sitting in the observation deck, looking at the stars. He wanted to leave, transfer to another outpost. Maybe go to a backwater repair ship and disappear, but he'd not yet. One evening, Nolan was working late trying to keep busy. He was under a console panel when someone walked in. He recognized the footsteps slight, careful .y. Ara. He didn't move. You've been avoiding me, she said, her voice calm but direct. He slid out from under the panel, wiping his hands. I've been working. You always work, she replied. But this is different. He looked at her. She stood tall, arms crossed, her face unreadable. But her eyes held questions. Nolan sighed. I didn't mean to make things strange. Then why do you act like something is wrong? She asked. He hesitated. It's nothing, really. Don't lie, she said softly. You've never lied to me before. He didn't answer. The silence stretched between them, finally. She said, Is it because of Talon? Nolan flinched. I saw you with him. You looked happy. He's a family friend, she said. Our parents were close, trained together as children. He touches your arm. He laughs with you, Nolan said. I thought, maybe. You too? Ayara raised an eyebrow. You thought we were together? He nodded slowly. She looked at him for a moment. Then, without saying anything, she turned and walked away. Nolan stood there, feeling cold and foolish. He had spoken without thinking, and now he felt worse than before. The next morning, Nolan arrived at the bay early. He hoped to avoid seeing Ayara, but she was already there standing near their shared workbench. Arms folded. We need to talk, she said. Nolan stopped. I know. You were wrong, she said. About me and Talon. I said I was sorry. You didn't ask me, you assumed, she said. You believed something without speaking to me? He stayed quiet. She stepped closer. Do you want to know the truth? He nodded. Double quotes, Talon came because my mother sent him, she said. He told me to come back home. He told me to give up this life and return to our city. He offered me a position in our council. Nolan blinked. That's important. Yes, she said, and I said no. Why? Because this is my place now. Here, with you. Nolan stared at her, unsure what to say. You think I brought you food and tea all these years just to be kind? She asked. He opened his mouth, but no words came. You think I stayed late with you? Listened to your music? Learned your language? Because I had nothing better to do? He swallowed. I thought you were just being friendly. Ayara stepped even closer. Nolan, I care about you. His heart jumped, but doubt held him back. Then why didn't you say anything before? Look down for a moment. Because my people believe love must come from the heart without pressure. If I told you first, you might feel forced to respond. So I waited. Waited for what? For you to speak first, she said gently. Nolan felt the weight of all his silence pressing on him. All those moments, all those near confessions, and he had wasted them. "I almost told you," he whispered, "so many times." "I know," she said. "I'm sorry." She smiled a little. "It's not too late." But before he could reply, an alarm echoed through the station. "Emergency. Docking Bay 3. Breach detected. All engineers respond." Awayara grabbed her toolkit. "We'll finish this later." Nolan nodded, and they ran together toward the bay. The emergency wasn't deadly, but it was dangerous. A cargo ship had crashed into the edge of the bay door, and a pressure seal was failing. Crates had spilled, wires sparked, and a hissing noise came from one of the tanks. "That's fuel," Ayara said. "We need to shut the valve now." Climbed onto the wrecked ship's side, while Ayara went underneath. The heat was rising. One wrong move and the whole section could explode. "Hold it steady," she called out. Nolan braced himself, using his body weight to keep the damaged frame from shifting. Sweat dripped down his face, but he held on. Awayara reached the valve and turned it slowly. The hissing stopped. "Got it," she shouted. Nolan exhaled in relief. They returned to the hallway, both of them covered in soot and dust. Other workers arrived to clean up the mess, but their job was done. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall. "You still owe me an answer," she said, catching her breath. Nolan looked at her, tired but smiling. "I love you." She blinked. "I've loved you for years," he said, voice steady this time. "I just never thought someone like you could love someone like me." Ayara stared at him, and then she laughed. Nolan blinked. "What's funny?" She leaned her head back against the wall and shook her head with a smile. "You're slow, Nolan." He frowned. "What?" She looked at him, eyes soft and shining. "I've been waiting for this moment longer than you think." Nolan sat beside Ayara, still surprised. She had laughed when he confessed. Not in a cruel way, but with warmth, like someone who had waited for something a long time and finally got it. "You're slow." "Nolan," she repeated, gently nudging his arm, double quotes. "Well, yeah," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "I guess I am." She looked at him with soft eyes. "Do you know how many times I wanted to say it first?" "Then why didn't you?" he asked. Awayara gave him a small smile. "My people believe that feelings like love must be free. No one should ever be forced to return them. We wait, watch, and hope." Nolan sighed. "So, I made you wait years?"
Yep.
"Weren't ready," she said. "And I didn't want to ruin what we already had. Your friendship meant everything to me." "It still does," he said quickly. "But now it's something more," she finished for him. They sat in silence, both of them thinking about the years they spent together. How close they had always been. How blind he had been to the signs. Every small touch, every kind gesture, he had seen them all, but never understood what they really meant. "What now?" he asked quietly. "We keep going," she replied. "Together." Next few days were different, not in loud or obvious ways. They still worked side by side, still fixed broken parts, and laughed at old trader jokes. But now there was something deeper between them, something that had always been their only. Now it had a name, love. Their friends on the station started noticing. Some smiled. Others looked confused. A few even whispered when they passed, but Nolan didn't care. For once he didn't feel like hiding anything. One day, while working on a large freighter's engine core, Yara reached out to wipe grease from his cheek. Nolan grinned. "Was that necessary?" "Yes," she said, dead serious. "You were starting to look like a soot monster." He laughed. "Then maybe you like soot monsters." She raised an eyebrow. "Only one." His heart did a small flip. They shared more quiet moments. Sometimes in the dining area, sometimes on the observation deck. Nolan would bring her earth snacks. She'd bring him Alari tea. Sometimes they didn't speak for long minutes. Just sat side by side, watching the stars. For Nolan, everything felt brighter. One evening, a message arrived at the station. It came from a nearby Sistaman, An old cargo vessel was stranded near a gas giant. Power was failing. Their engines were dead. They had only a few hours before the planet's gravity pulled them into its storms. The station chief assigned Nolan and Ayara to the rescue mission. They were the most experienced repair team. Inside the small rescue shuttle, Nolan checked the systems while Ayara plotted the route. The engines hummed gently. Stars passed by the window. "You nervous?" "Asked a little," he admitted. "Not because of the mission." She glanced over. "Then why?" "Because this is our first real mission," she said. She gave him a smile. "You'll be fine." The stranded ship came into view. It spun slowly, pulled by the gas giant's strong pull. The outer hull was damaged, and lights flickered weakly. "We'll need to dock manually," Ayara said. "Auto systems won't work in this storm pull." Nolan nodded. "I'll handle it." The shuttle shook slightly as it approached. Nolan focused hard, adjusting the angle, watching the readings. Ayara stayed calm, guiding him. "Just a little more," she said. "I know." The docking clamps locked in with a sharp click. The shuttle and the cargo ship were now one. Inside, the air was thin. The crew, a group of 3 alien traders, looked scared but relieved. One of them pointed at the engine core. "We lost control." Everything went dark. Nolan and Ayara got to work. The storm outside was getting stronger. If they didn't fix the power soon, no one would escape. Nolan slid into the narrow passage leading to the reactor. Sparks flew, and he ducked. "Careful," Ayara called from above. "I'm okay," he shouted back. Inside, he saw the Problema burnt-out energy relay in a loose cooling line. He tapped his com. "We'll need to replace both. Fast," Ayara replied. "On it." They worked quickly. She handed him tools. He replaced the relay. The lights flickered, then steadied. The engines hummed again. The storm roared louder outside. "We're almost out of time," she warned. "Let's go." They rushed back to the shuttle, guiding the traders with them. Once everyone was aboard, Nolan hit the engines hard. The shuttle pulled away just as the cargo ship was dragged into the upper storms. They all watched as the old ship vanished into clouds. "Close one," Ayara whispered. Nolan looked at her. "Too close." The traders thanked them, but Nolan barely heard the words. His focus was only on Ayara, her face, her calm, the way she always trusted him. Back at the station, after the report was filed and the crew rested, Nolan found Ayara. In the observation deck, she stood quietly, staring at the stars. He walked up beside her. "You flew us out," she said. "You trusted me." "I always do," she replied. Nolan took a deep breath. "I used to be scared of saying the wrong thing, or making things strange." "You never did," she said. He looked at her. "Ayara, can we keep going like this? Not just as teammates? Not just as friends?" She turned to him, her voice soft. "What do you want, Nolan?" "I want to be the one who brings you tea. I want to be the one who walks with you at night. I want to be the reason you smile." Her eyes glowed in the soft light. "And be that." He reached out, and this time she took his hand. The stars above them said nothing, but their silence felt full of promise. The days that followed were some of the best Nolan had ever known. Work on the space station continued as usual. Ships came and went. Machines broke and were fixed, but something inside him had changed. Everything felt lighter now, every moment. With Ayara had meaning, even the quiet ones. The small things made the biggest difference. Her hand brushing his when she passed him a tool. The way she looked at him before speaking, as if seeing him fully now. The way their footsteps always stayed in rhythm when they walked together. Most of the station crew understood what had happened. They saw it in the way Nolan smiled more now, and in the way Ayara stayed close during breaks. No one said anything out loud, but they didn't have to. One evening, as the shift ended, Nolan and Ayara sat together on the old bench near the outer airlock. It was quiet there, with a view of the distant stars and drifting debris fields from old shipwrecks. "Ever think about the future?" Nolan asked. Ayara leaned back. "Sometimes. What do you see?" "I see," A garden, she said softly. With real trees, not just green walls. I see clear water and soft air. Peace. Nolan smiled. Like that. And you? She asked. I see you, he replied, voice gentle. Wherever that future is, I want you in it. She didn't speak for a moment. Then she leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Me too. They stayed like that for a while, in quiet. Comfort. The next morning, a message came from Central Command. A research outpost near the edge of explored space needed assistance. Their communication systems were failing, and no ships nearby were able to help. Nolan and Ayara were asked to go. It was a 2-day journey, longer than usual. Station Chief gave them a scout-class ship, small but fast. Before leaving, Nolan checked every system twice. He was nervous, not because of the mission, but because this would be the first time he and Ayara would be alone in space for days. Just the two of them. Ara noticed. You're overthinking again. Just being careful, he said with a half-dash smile. They launched without trouble. The stars outside stretched long during the jump phase. Inside, the ship was quiet, cozy. They shared a small cabin, took turns resting, cooked simple meals together. On the second night, he floated in the observation pod, a glass bubble, with a full view of the galaxy. Ayara brought a blanket and a flask of warm Alari tea. Nolan sipped slowly. This is nice. I like silence, she said. But this silence is different. How so? It's shared, she replied, looking at him. I never liked being alone in space, until now. Nolan watched her face in the dim starlight. Can I ask you something? Of course, was there ever a time you almost gave up on me? She turned to him with a calm expression. Yes, he swallowed. When, after that day in the storage room, when you saw me with Talon, she said. You didn't. Trust me, it hurt. I was jealous, he admitted. I thought he was better than me. He wasn't, she said. But you wouldn't let yourself believe I could want you. I was scared. I know, she whispered. I stayed. Because even when you didn't speak your heart, your actions always did. Nolan nodded slowly. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm not, she said, smiling softly. Because now we're here. Outside, a meteor cluster drifted by, glowing faintly in the darkness. The ship hummed softly, floating through space. Like a dream, Nolan turned toward her. Can I tell you something?
Always.
I think I'm falling in love with you more every day. She smiled and reached for his hand. Good, because I don't want you to stop. The next morning, they reached the research outpost. It floated near a blue planet with strong magnetic storms. The station's signal was weak, but steady. Inside, the scientists greeted them with relief. Systems were failing power fluctuations, broken antennae, and damaged shielding. The outpost had valuable data on deep space signals that couldn't be lost. Nolan and Ayara worked fast. He repaired the core communication system while she climbed outside in a suit to fix the damaged shield nodes. As he spoke to the crew, one of the scientists pulled him aside. She trusts you completely, the older woman said. Nolan looked toward the window, where Ayara moved gracefully along the hull. Yeah, I trust her too. I don't just mean with work, the scientist said. I've seen many crews in my time. The bond between you two, it's rare. Don't take it for granted. Nolan nodded quietly outside. The wind from the planet's magnetic field made small flashes against the station's shield. It was beautiful, like blue lightning dancing in slow motion. When Ayara came back inside, her face was calm. It's done. You're amazing, he said. I know, she replied with a playful smile. They returned to their ship the next day. The data was safe, the crew stable, and the outpost grateful as they traveled back. Nolan sat in the pilot seat while Ayara rested nearby. He looked at her peaceful, strong, the same person he had admired for years. And now, she was his partner, not just in work, but in something more powerful. He reached over and gently held her hand. She opened her eyes slowly and smiled, thinking again. Always, he said. About what? About how lucky I am. Not lucky, she said with a soft chuckle. You're late, but I forgive you. He laughed too. Fair enough. Outside, the stars moved slowly like they had all the time in the world, and maybe finally they did. The stars outside the scout ship glittered like distant fires. Nolan sat at the pilot's console, hands steady on the controls. Beside him, Ayara adjusted the ship's sensors, her calm presence filling the small cabin. This was their first long mission alone, far from the busy space station, deep into unexplored space. The silence here was different, quieter. It held no secrets between them. "You're doing great," Ayara said softly, breaking the quiet. "Thanks," Nolan replied, glancing at her. "Couldn't have done it without you." She smiled, her silver blue skin glowing faintly in the console's light. "We make a good team." They had faced many challenges together, pairs, emergencies, long nights. But this mission was different. It tested more than their skills. It tested the trust and love that had grown quietly between them. Suddenly, the sensors beeped urgently. "Something's wrong," Ayara said, eyes narrowing at the screen. Nolan leaned forward. A cargo vessel was trapped in a strong gravity well near a small gas giant. Its engines were offline, and the ship was drifting closer to the planets. "Violent storms. We have to help them," Nolan said. "Can we reach them in time?" Ayara asked. "We'll try." The scout ship powered up, engines humming louder as they sped toward the trapped vessel. The gas giant loomed ahead, swirling storms visible even from space. As they approached, the trapped ship sent out a weak distress signal. Its crew, a mix of different alien species, waited nervously. "We need to dock manually," Ayara said. "Automatic systems won't work in this gravity field." Nolan took the controls. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he carefully maneuvered the scout ship. The storm's pull was strong. Every second counted. "Steady," he muttered. With a sudden jolt, the docking clamps locked. Inside the trapped ship, alarms blared and lights flickered. The crew rushed to secure their belongings. Nolan and Ayara moved quickly to the engine room. Smoke filled the cramped space, and sparks flew from exposed wires. "Engines fried," Ayara said, her voice calm but urgent. "We need to replace the main relay and reroute power to the secondary system."
Ow.
Nolan nodded and started disassembling the damaged parts. The heat was intense, but he didn't stop. "We don't have much time," Ayara reminded him. After what felt like hours, they finished the repairs. The engines hummed back to life, lights stabilized, and the alarm stopped. "We're good too." "Go," Nolan said, wiping sweat from his brow. They rushed back to their ship with the grateful crew. Once aboard, Nolan powered up the engines. The scout ship pulled away just as the trapped vessel was caught in a massive storm surge. "That was too close," Ayara said, her voice steady but relieved. Nolan looked at her, admiration shining in his eyes. "You were amazing down there." Smiled softly. "So were you." They sat together in the observation pod, watching the gas giant's storms fade behind them. "You know," Nolan began, "I've been thinking." "About what?" "How much stronger we are when we work together." Ayara reached for his hand. "And how much more we can face if we face it together." He squeezed her hand gently. "Ayara, I love you." Her eyes sparkled. "I love you too, Nolan." They leaned closer, the vast stars around them silent witnesses to a new beginning. Back at the space station weeks later, their story was known among the crew.
Ow.
Two unlikely souls from different worlds, united by patience and courage. Nolan and Ayara moved through their days with new confidence. They fixed ships, shared meals, and explored unknown places, always side by side. One evening, as the station lights dimmed, Ayara took Nolan's hand and led him to the observation deck. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them. "This is just the start," she said. "I wouldn't want to be anywhere else," Nolan replied. They watched the stars, dreaming of the adventures ahead together.